There are faces that step onto the screen not just to perform, but to become a fragment of a generation's memory. For Hollywood in the 1980s, Sean Young was one of those faces, cold, enigmatic, and beautiful in a way that didn't seem to belong to any particular era. Those eyes, sharp and deep, always carried the sense that she was hiding a story the audience was never allowed to touch. And it was precisely that mystery that shaped Rachael in Blade Runner, an immortal cinematic icon. But what no one expected was this: Sean Young vanished almost overnight. No criminal scandal, no moral downfall, no catastrophic box office failure. She simply disappeared. As if Hollywood, the very place that once celebrated her, had decided to erase her name from its entire system. For years, whispers drifted across studio lots. She's hard to work with, she's rebellious, she's out of control. The media painted her as the embodiment of instability, while Hollywood remained silent, a silence heavy enough to bury an entire career. But when all those scattered pieces are placed together, a different truth emerges. Sean Young wasn't devoured by scandal, but by her own strength. Her blunt honesty, her cutting intellect, and her refusal to bow, traits that once made her shine, became the very excuses Hollywood used to push her aside. In a system built on control, a woman like Sean was unpredictable, uncomfortable, and ultimately unacceptable. To understand why Hollywood feared Sean Young enough to want her erased from the spotlight, we need to return to the beginning, to the childhood, the temperament, and the early scars that shaped a woman who never learned to lower her head before anyone. Sean Young was born in 1959 in Louisville, Kentucky, into a family where discipline and sharp intellect were treated as a shared language. Her father, a strict communications executive, believed that success was a duty, not a stroke of luck. Her mother, a smart and outspoken journalist, raised her children with the principle that the truth must be spoken, even when it hurts. In that environment, Sean grew up not with gentle embraces, but with expectations. To be strong, to be independent, and to never show weakness. From a young age, she studied ballet, an art form both beautiful and unforgiving. Long hours of training, twisted ankles, and tears, swallowed in silence, taught Sean how to hide pain and maintain perfection, even when everything was cracking beneath the surface. Ballet instilled endurance and control, qualities that later shaped her cool, intense on-screen presence. But ballet also left her with an unspoken lesson. If you don't control your own body and mind, someone else will. This is the root of the fierce personality that Hollywood would one day fear. As she entered adolescence, Sean stood out unmistakably. She wasn't the soft, delicate type. She was sharp-minded, confident, and capable of intimidating others simply by being herself. Her eyes always seemed to observe and analyze everything around her. Early maturity, a strict family environment, and the harsh discipline of the arts forged a personality that could not be molded easily. A woman built from discipline, truth, and endurance. And it was this very personality that opened the door for her to enter Hollywood, but also planted the seeds of the conflicts that would later shatter her career. When she reached adulthood, Sean Young did not choose a safe path. Instead of seeking a stable job or a predictable life, she walked straight into some of the most competitive worlds: modeling, dance, and eventually film. But what's important is that Sean didn't pursue the arts to become famous. Deep inside, she always felt she was born to exist under the lights, as if that was the only place where she could channel all her energy and strength. Modeling brought Sean to New York, where sharp-eyed talent scouts first encountered her beauty, an unusual blend of classic elegance and icy detachment. It was also where she learned that attention is not always a gift. Sometimes it is a battleground of will. Yet, it was her calm, almost enigmatic composure that drew directors toward her. Her first role in Stripes, 1981, was small, but Shawn stepped onto the set with a confidence that stunned many young actors around her. She didn't act like a newcomer. She carried herself as though she had known the camera all her life. Hollywood took notice, not because of her lines, but because of a presence that could not be ignored. Then came the defining moment, the encounter between Sean Young and Ridley Scott. When Scott saw her audition for Blade Runner, he didn't need to see anything more. She had Rachael's eyes, quiet, cold, deep, and carrying a question no one could ever fully decipher. Sean didn't play Rachael. She was Rachael. From that moment on, the cinematic flame within her began to burn. Not a blazing fire, but a cold one, steady, deep, and dangerous, the kind of light strong enough to make her a legend, and strong enough to make Hollywood wary. When Blade Runner 1982 premiered, the cinematic world witnessed the arrival of a type of actress it had never seen before. Sean Young as Rachael wasn't just beautiful, she made the audience pause. Her beauty didn't come from makeup or styling, but from a cold, deep energy. Still yet pulsing, with something alive beneath it. Any frame with Rachael felt like a moment where time slowed down. The viewer wasn't just looking at the character, but into the character. What made Shawn remarkable was that she didn't act like an 80s Hollywood performer. She didn't exaggerate emotions. She didn't try to leave an impression. She let her eyes speak, eyes that contained an entire world. Sadness, intellect, caution, and a fragility even she might not have realized she carried. This made Rachael one of the most discussed sci-fi characters in cinematic history. After Blade Runner, Sean Young continued to appear in Dune, 1984, No Way Out, 1987, and Wall Street, 1987, projects that demanded strong, sharp screen presence. What's fascinating is that even when she wasn't the lead, audiences always remembered her. Not because of her lines, not because of dramatic scenes, but because of her unpredictability. A sense that beneath her cool expression lay something unspoken. That created a very different kind of radiance. Not flashy, not crowd-pleasing, but powerful enough to make anyone look twice. However, this very strength began to make Hollywood's behind-the-scenes world wary. Shawn wasn't soft. She didn't pretend to be sweet. In meetings, she spoke directly, looked straight into people's eyes, and that personality, strong, sharp, unapologetic, made powerful figures feel they couldn't control her. And in an industry built on obedience, anyone not easy to manage is quickly labeled a risk. So when Shawn was standing at the peak of her career, the first cracks quietly appeared. No one said anything. No major scandal erupted. But the small whispers, hard to work with, too strong, unpredictable, began slipping into boardrooms. And sometimes, just a few whispers are enough to shake an entire career. When a star begins to shine too brightly, Hollywood reacts in a very familiar way, with caution. For Sean Young, that caution arrived faster and stronger than it did for any actress of her generation. She didn't fit the standard template Hollywood preferred. She was too intelligent, too outspoken, and too independent for anyone to control. What the public saw was a talented actress. What the industry saw was an unpredictable variable. Things began to go off course in 1988, when her name appeared alongside James Woods in a noisy lawsuit. Even though Woods withdrew the case and no ruling was made against Shawn, the media didn't need the truth. They only needed a story, and Sean Young, with her mysterious beauty and strong personality, became the perfect target for the label unstable. Within just a few weeks, her image was distorted into dangerous, difficult to work with, out of control. No one asked what actually happened. No one bothered to look at evidence. Rumors were stronger than truth, and Hollywood always clings to whatever feeds its fears. After that, whispers began seeping through the industry. Shawn argued with directors. Shawn refused to listen. Shawn liked to work her own way. But if one looks deeper, it becomes clear that this wasn't rebellion. It was simply the nature of a woman used to speaking openly about things others didn't dare mention. In a place built on power and silence, a woman without fear is always seen as a threat. Shawn's real pain wasn't the rumors. It was the feeling of being misunderstood. She tried to remain calm, tried to explain herself, but every word she said was twisted into more evidence for the label Hollywood wanted to attach to her. Unsafe. And then, the real storm began. Not from one spectacular fall, but from hundreds of tiny cuts, whispered rumors, meetings where her name was quietly removed, wary glances from people who once smiled at her on the red carpet. Hollywood didn't need to push her off a cliff. They only needed to let her slip slowly into the dark. The collapse of Shawn Young's career was not a loud explosion. It was like the stage lights being slowly dimmed, bit by bit, until she suddenly realized she was standing in darkness without knowing when the light had gone out. No one ever declared that Hollywood had turned its back on her. No article proclaimed her career over. Yet the doors that once opened wide began to close quietly, silently, and with a coldness that could terrify any artist. The first crack appeared in 1989 when Shawn was cast as Vicky Vale in Batman. A horseback riding accident just days before filming forced her to withdraw, and although it was nothing more than an unfortunate occupational mishap, Hollywood didn't see it that way. In boardrooms, those who had already been wary of Shawn now had the perfect excuse to place her on the risk list. A single incident beyond her control became the starting point of a long, unfair decline. But the real blow came with Batman Returns, 1992. When she learned she was not invited to audition for Catwoman, Shawn did what a strong, desperate woman might do. She showed up at Warner Brothers in a full Catwoman suit, hoping for a face-to-face moment with director Tim Burton. In Shawn's eyes, it was an act of determination, but in Hollywood's eyes, it became evidence, proof that she was difficult to control. And so, a moment of self-assertion was twisted into a joke, into tabloid fodder, and into the perfect justification for studios to cross her name off their lists without ever needing to explain why. No verdict, no formal accusation, yet the punishment was unmistakable. She was silently removed from major projects. Shawn tried to hold on, tried to reclaim her place. But in a system where reputation is the lifeblood, once that breath is taken away, an artist dies slowly, often without realizing it. Her disappearance did not come from failure, but from the clash between a woman who refused to bow and an industry that has never forgiven those who dare to be different. When Hollywood went silent, what hurt Shawn Young the most wasn't the loss of roles. It was the feeling that the entire world suddenly no longer saw her. That silence didn't strike all at once. It slipped into her life day by day. 1 year without calls, then 2, then 3. Invitations that once flooded in turned into an endless void, and within that void, a slow, dull ache began to grow. The fear of being forgotten. No one stepped up to defend her. No one spoke on her behalf. Even those who once praised her on the red carpet began to avert their eyes when they accidentally crossed paths. To Shawn, this wasn't just a declining career. It was a form of psychological isolation, where she had to live with the sense that she had been erased from the map in an invisible way. Old rumors resurfaced every time she appeared. A straightforward comment was treated as proof of instability. An act of self-protection was twisted into being hard to control. Every attempt she made to explain herself only pulled her deeper into the label Hollywood had already assigned her: unsafe. And when there was no way to break that cycle, Shawn turned to alcohol, not to forget, but to quiet the noise in her mind, the blame, the doubt, the pain of being misunderstood. In 2008, Shawn Young appeared on Celebrity Rehab, not for attention, but because she was clear-headed enough to realize that if she didn't stop, the loneliness Hollywood had imposed on her would turn into a wound that could never heal. It was one of the rare moments when she allowed the world to see the real damage behind her tough exterior. During that dark period, the thing that kept her grounded wasn't the spotlight. It was her family, the peaceful evenings with her husband and children, the days without paparazzi, the small moments she had missed for years while chasing fame. All became a refuge where she slowly began to mend herself. Shawn Young came to understand a bitter but liberating truth. Hollywood can take away roles, reputation, and light, but it cannot take away her right to live life on her own terms. And from that realization, she began to find herself again, not as a cinematic icon, but as a human being trying to heal the invisible scars that fame had left behind. After many years pushed to the margins of Hollywood, Shawn Young's return looked nothing like the grand comebacks the public is used to. There were no blockbusters, no promotional campaigns, no bold declaration that she was back to reclaim justice. Her rebirth unfolded quietly, like a small candle lit in a hidden corner, without needing anyone to witness it. She took on small roles in independent films. These projects didn't bring fame, didn't have big budgets, but they gave Shawn back something she had once lost: the right to make art without scrutiny, without supervision, without being forced into the mold of safe or manageable. Each small role was another breath of life, a piece that reminded her that Hollywood had never taken her identity away. Shawn also appeared at Blade Runner anniversary events, where audiences rose to applaud not a fallen star, but an icon that would never fade. What stood out at those events was how she didn't try to seem perfect. She wasn't acting, wasn't playing the victim, and wasn't trying to prove that the media had been wrong about her. She simply stood there, calm, slow, with a hint of gentle humor, as if she had finally learned how to live in the light without letting it burn her. What made this period a true rebirth was how Shawn chose her place, not clinging to the past, not fighting to reclaim old glory, but also not walking away from cinema entirely. She kept a safe distance, far enough not to be hurt again, close enough to continue living with the art she loved. In that piece, Shawn Young found something that all her years chasing fame had never given her: freedom. Freedom from Hollywood's expectations, freedom from vicious rumors, and freedom from the pressure to be an icon every time she stepped in front of a camera. When people mention Shawn Young, many often recall the controversies, the rumors, or her mysterious disappearance from Hollywood. But stopping there means missing the most important part: what Shawn left behind for cinema, something time, scandal, and the media could never erase. Shawn Young's greatest legacy is Rachael in Blade Runner. That character not only became an icon of science fiction, but also a testament to her rare ability to evoke emotion without relying on dialogue. The image of Rachael, with those deep eyes, that unnameable sadness, that fragility interlaced with strength, became a part of pop culture. To this day, film scholars still analyze how Shawn brought forth an energy so unique that no one has ever been able to replicate it. But beyond the screen, Shawn left another mark, one Hollywood needed decades to mature enough to acknowledge. She was among the first to speak out about how actresses were controlled, silenced, and punished for not being obedient. Long before the Me Too movement emerged, Sean Young spoke about things the entire industry didn't want to hear. And although the price was her career, that voice became a foundation for conversations about power, fairness, and how Hollywood treats strong women. Today, young actresses look back at Sean's story not as a warning about rebellion, but as a reflection of what happens when a system refuses to face women who are intelligent, autonomous, and not easily controlled. She appears in lists such as Most Underrated Talents and Hollywood's Most Unfairly Treated Stars. But woven between those headlines is something Hollywood denied her in her youth: respect. Sean Young's legacy does not lie in the number of films she made, but in the symbolism she carried. The icy tenderness of Rachael, the unfiltered honesty that once got her punished, and the long journey of reclaiming herself after losing everything. She is a reminder that some artists are not born to fit into a system, but because of that, they remain longer in the audience's memory. When all the noise has faded, when old headlines have turned to dust on forgotten pages, and when Hollywood has changed so much it can barely recognize itself, Sean Young's story still stands, like a thin but deep cut, reminding us that not every tragedy comes from wrongdoing. Some tragedies come from a person daring to live too honestly, too boldly, too unapologetically in a world that only admires the soft and easily managed. Sean Young was never the model of the perfect star. She wasn't diplomatic, she didn't know how to please everyone, and she couldn't hide her frustration in the face of injustice. But that is precisely what makes her story unforgettable. Hollywood often celebrates those who know how to pretend. Yet, Sean Young lived as if she didn't even know what the word pretend meant. Today, Sean no longer competes with the spotlight. She chooses a peaceful life, far from the chaos of massive film sets. But strangely, it is this very distance that allows people to see her more clearly. An artist who dared to confront the system, even when the cost was her entire career. A sharp, icy icon Hollywood could never recreate. And an artistic soul who lived fully, even when that fullness was carved out of pain. And now, having heard her entire story, perhaps the final question doesn't belong to Hollywood, nor to the media. It belongs to you, the person watching this video. What do you think truly defeated Sean Young? Her uncompromising strength, or a Hollywood that never knew how to treat women like her fairly? If her story had unfolded today, in the age of the internet, of Me Too, of transparency, would Sean Young's fate still be determined by invisible whispers? Share your thoughts below. Because this story isn't just Sean Young's tragedy, it is also a mirror reflecting how we as viewers see, love, and sometimes unintentionally hurt the very people who create our dreams.